our new time of midday. And today, Bethania will be leading our experiential. We were wondering about a new name. We've been calling it a warm-up, but it's evolved to be something more than a warm-up, depending on what people have wanted to share with us. So we're switching to experiential, and that lends itself to warm up plus. So Bethania, I'll hand it over to you, and thank you for offering to lead this for us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. I was so inspired last week by Grace and your beautiful artwork that was used as a stimulus. So I've tried to go a little bit along that theme, but I'm going to be using a poem that comes from the Chandogya Upanishad. It's the beginning of a poem that I've worked with for many, many years and found rich every time I use it. So the words of the poem will be on the share screen, and I will say each part of the poem that will be used as a stimulus as we progress through that poem. I'll share the poem first. It's not the complete poem, it's the beginning. It goes, in this body, in this town of spirit, there is a little house shaped like a lotus, and in that house there is a little space. One should know what is there. What is there? Why is it so important? So we'll begin moving with the beginning of that poem, which is, in this body. So in your movement, allow it to awaken you to this body and in this body. Awakening to this body and in this body. And for each section, I will be giving about 5 minutes movement time before we progress to the next part. Gently, we will move on to the next part of the verse, which is, in this town of spirit. The town is a metaphor for the body. It is a town of spirit. What is in that town? Explore this body as a town of spirit. What is that town for you today? Who or what is being met? In that town? And gently we are moving to the next part of the verse. There is a little house shaped like a lotus. Moving through and exploring that town, find the little house. What is it like? How does it feel? Where is it located? Be and move, find that little house. Gently moving to the next verse. And in that house, there is a little space. Find that little space in that house. Experience it, feel it, and know it. Is it familiar or new? What is it like in there? Move into it and explore it. Take your time to really find it, explore it, move in it, and discover what's in it. Is it a good space for you to be in? Is it a kind space? How far can you move? And in your journey, you may want to move in and out of that little space. And one last time, come back to that little space, asking, what is there? Why is it so important? Coming back to that space, ask, what is there? Why is it so important? And to crystallize that understanding, take the movement into something that will capture the essence of this experience for yourself. And in the next minute, take that to gently move back, out, and coming back into this present moment where you can relate on another level if you need to. Thank you. Would you like to share just freely? Angela? How do people just unmute
Of
and
course,
speak?
just yeah. People can unmute and share when they're ready to. Sure.
That was so
Jane?
so beautiful, really. Thank you very much for that. And I found the words and the visual picture that you put up was sort of inspirational. It was lovely, really. And I just got very involved and very absorbed in it.
Thank you, Jane. Fran, did you want to speak? You're unmuted.
I feel like I'm in some other realm, and it's a little bit difficult coming back to the speaking mode so quickly. You really transported us to another place, a small space. Yeah. So that's rather nice to think that you can't just hop into speaking. You actually have to journey back. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. It was beautiful, Buthena. And so imaginative. Lovely. Yeah.
Feel free to, I guess that should have been incorporated, but it was a short session. So yes, to come back to the body, it is a transition. Thank you for that, Fran.
I would like to speak. Although it was very short, but my body went through a few authentic movements. But just to summarize, is I feel that my body, like I'm carrying history in my body through the ages. Like you talk about what is my town, and it's actually a ghost town, you know, and there's clock, you know, going through. So it's like I actually not just carrying myself, but I'm carrying all my generations, my lineage, and so on. And there's a lot of like, what do we do now? What do we do now? You know, and that kind of trauma, you know, coming down intergenerational in my DNA or whatever. It's like I'm continuing history. That's what I felt. And the lotus, you know, where I was, the lotus is the center of universe, whatever that means. And I just felt like I don't like to be in my skin for some reason. And the tiny me is me. It's the me, you know, that you know, very familiar, but yet not. You know, the one that has to do it. It's like, so the end of it is like actually where I am right now is what is my calling? What am I called to do? What's my destiny? Where do I go from here? What is there? As in like the who. I'm going past like, okay, who am I? Okay, I sort of like kind of move past that, but it's now what am I and how am I going to do it? Yeah. So this is where I'm at this morning actually. So that was very, very interesting exploration coming out, you know, through the body. So the biggest takeaway is that, you know, I'm carrying, you know, my ancestors' genes in me, and I'm a continuing story somehow, and I realize it in the body. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's really interesting, because that's what I was feeling, that the movements felt historical in terms of they've come down from other parts of my background, and it's sort of like I didn't even have to think about it, it just happened. And when I thought about it, I went, oh, okay, that's where that's coming from, you know. So it was really interesting.
Thank you.
So did everybody hear what I said? Because Connor, you just sent something.
Yes, we did.
It was Eleanor who said she couldn't hear, and I was saying I could hear, so it might be her connection.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, so I think everybody carries something of the past with them. You know, yeah.
That's a very useful thing to actually hear. Thank you, Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
I share the same little bit of what Grace and Teresa said. The understanding that the past is not only the past, it's also the present, and it's also the future. And when that's all connected. But just for a second, I had the ability to just contemplate without trying to make sense of any of that, and feel how whatever my emotions or my feelings were, just playing around in my body, and what I was being resistant to doing, what came natural, and if that was a response of, let's call me, myself, right here, right now, or an accumulate of everything else that came before. But I wasn't in the position to judge or to try and make sense of it. I just contemplated. It felt really good.
Yeah, and I'll follow on that. It was very contemplative, and also I think that because it was feeling like a journey and going so deep that it wasn't like specific story or image line really totally resonated. But what was really cool was just the exploration of, feeling into different kinds of moving in some ways. They were more closer to the body. It was more, for me, a bit of a central access, but it was kind of like I was going around with things and movement and hands on the body a lot. I mean, there was a little bit of going down and a little bit, but it was feeling very juicy, very journeying. I could have kept going. And it would be fun to play with art because it feels that it's got that deepness where if I just play with art for a while, I might, find some strong image that arises. So again, it's a bit wordless. It's a bit more of a very much embodied journey. So thank you. I loved it.
I'll share something. It's my first time here today. I'm so glad that I've finally managed to make it. I've met some of the coordinators about 2 years ago when I joined a workshop in Melbourne. That was when I first got pregnant, and now I'm a mum of two. Yeah, thank you so much, Britannia. There was a very powerful journey. I haven't really been able to move freely for a while, and just appreciate being able to get into it. And I think it highlighted a point for me when you said the town is our body, and I started paying attention to every little detail of my body. I think when we talked about the body, I was looking at it as a whole, but when you talked about the town, it's like there are so many details in us that we sometimes we don't look at it. We just move through it. But that's every single aspect or every single cell and gene in us, like you said, Grace, really means something. And that took me a moment to actually do that for myself. And you talked about the room towards the end and exploring the house. I was hesitant going to the house, but once I was in it, I took the courage to get in, and to get into that room, it was really powerful. I actually felt like I could be free and be me. And I really just wanted to be me. I think that was where I was at. And exploring that purpose, I think towards the end when you said one last time, asking yourself what that means to you to be in that room, I think freedom came out for me. I just want to be free and just being able to express myself and be confident with who I am, despite everything that we carry, or I carry with me. So it was an incredibly beautiful journey. I work with young people, and I'm really inspired and wanting to actually learn more about dance therapy to bring into their lives. Yeah, so thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'd like to share my experience. Thank you so much for the beautiful warm-up. I feel very calm after doing this, moving to that poem. And so when you said the town in our body, I have 6 Hindu goddess pictures given by my Japanese yoga teacher when I left Japan for Australia last year. And I kept those images. That was a part of the calendar, and I just kept the images. So one day I could draw frames for them. So I did. And there are these 6 gods lining up, and it just captured my eyes. And I started moving to each god pictures. Like it felt like a town, different towns, and it all kind of inside me. So that was really, like, felt really powerful to have that sort of image and the realization. And then the very different qualities of movement came up. And then, you know, I used a very different kind of dynamics or attentions or dimensions in my movements according to each god. And it felt like, wow, you know, like I have an access actually to very different qualities, and that felt quite empowering. And yeah, when you talked about the space, it came to my attention came to my womb, and then the gesture I repeatedly did was the shape of this heart. And then again, this reminded me of Tasmania, where I am now. So, you know, like all these little connections kind of made sense in this little session today. And it was very beautiful to go through that. And I felt really calm and empowered. And I didn't want to go away from that room, the womb, the heart room inside my womb. And then that was also powerful to know that I can actually carry this anywhere, anytime, wherever I go. It's always with me. So that was very, yeah, powerful. Thank you so much.
I'd like to say something now. I felt born into the space of my heart, but then and all the chakras of the body. I'll have this lotus, and I'm going through the different chakras and what that felt. And staying with my heart center, it felt like from there, my real life was emerging. My inner life was there, and I was conscious of it and wanted to stay there and allow it to be and allow it to move if it wanted to. And when I took that out into the space and felt the village or the town and what I was in that town and what I was for that town and what that town was for me, was this idea was flowing in and out. And as we came back, I felt that the shape of my heart was becoming the shape of my whole being, and that doesn't quite make sense, but I'm happy to live with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bethana.
You're welcome. Thanks. If no one else would like to share, there is time, I believe. But if not, I'm happy to let Angela take over.
There might be some more sharings.
Everyone seems a bit subdued today.
It's probably the time.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, because we're usually it's like in the morning, 10 o'clock to 11. I think 12 o'clock, even though it's we're here, it's a different, I think it's a different time. You know, the sun's up a bit more. We've been active.
But we're in different time frames too, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, Eleanor, what's the time where you are?
Oh, it's almost 10:45 right now. But I'm a late bird, so it's okay with me. I stay up late usually. I'm sorry, I was going in and out of the session. My audio was going in and out, and I spent time trying to get back in. But I did move, and I enjoyed the experience. I love the slides and the poem. Thania, I want to say that. Thank you.
That's welcome. Thank you.
Yes, right now I'm in a space where I'm thinking about all the protests going on here in New York and all over the country, and it's just very very disheartening, and I don't know. It's more upheaval, around me. I'm not close to it, but I feel it.
Yeah.
And I just, not knowing how things are going to proceed, what our new normal is going to be. I don't know. It's, I just have a lot of questions about how we're going to function as far as, being equal, being fair to all, and, seeing justice, for horrific acts that have been been going on, not only to Black people but to all people. So I think that for me it's on my mind, and the way I'm handling it, I keep busy. I'm outside a lot, working and moving. But it's always good to connect with people like this forum, because it gives me time just to kind of be with myself and kind of find peace and calm. So that's where I'm at tonight.
Eleanor, I think it's reverberating through us as well, what's happening over there. It's not just where you are. No doubt it's to a huge degree there. I can't imagine what it would be like, but we can feel it down here too.
Yeah.
I'd like to share, Eleanor, on running with that theme. When Bethania asked us to move and explore the town, I found that, in this town, there's different rivers, and there's the courthouse, and there's the temple, and there's the neighborhood on this side of the river, and the neighborhood on that side of the river, and all the parts that get along and all the parts that don't get along within this town. And I was like, oh, where's the integration for all of this? And it was just a relief when you finally brought us into that temple of the House of the Lotus, because that's where I could find, the centering and the integration. And so that was a great relief to find the peace there, but also valuable to be exploring the parts, the parts that are in dissonance and discord, and that create angst and insecurity and uncertainty within my own town. So very useful information. And I love that you read from the Upanishads, because one of my bedtime readings these days has been the Yoga Sutras. So it felt very much in keeping in that theme, and bringing awareness to this mind that is a tricky agent and very slippery, and that creates all the discord. So it was really precious. Thank you very much.
Thanks for saying that, because it really does relate to what Eleanor is speaking as well. And when you were speaking, Eleanor, I really thought that was part of the town that you were experiencing. and we are experiencing that, what's going on, the discord. So it is in that way part of the town in this body, isn't it?
Mm.
Thanks for both of you for speaking.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yes. That's why I said it was good to connect, you know, to see everyone here in the group and to and take time out of, you know, my normal, just be out there, you know, moving and working, and just to kind of be here and think about what's going on inside of me right now, how I'm feeling, being in the moment, and trying to find, you know, the balance between that discord and the peace, you know, weighing it and finding the balance. So, yeah.
I want to share two things. One of them is, well, one of them, several people brought up that they felt like they were carrying generations in their body. And many years ago, and some of you have heard this before that have worked with me in groups, but I had a client who wanted to work on her unaccountable rage. And she was a client who really did a lot of movement in the sessions, also very articulate. And I won't go into the whole thing, and I'll quickly summarize. But in the middle of the session of really moving very strong, after talking about what had happened that day, to want her to bring up why she had this anger towards people that she didn't have any anger towards, she stopped and said, "Oh my God, this is not my anger. This is not my rage. It's my mother's." And from that day, she was able to start her healing journey. And that was an amazing lesson for me, because I've learned that we do carry not only our mothers, our grandmothers, our grandfathers. And recently, I've done a lot of work over these last couple of months, lots of webinars, lots of trainings, just having a chance to revisit some of the things that made me who I am now. And there was some very profound experiences that different people shared about what they held on to. And for me, I was doing a journey, and I've always done the matriarchal journey, and I'd never done the patriarchal journey. And I said, "Oh my God, I wonder what that is." And I started that, and it was just a shock, the things that came up. But I had to use my own personal witness and to focus on that and to bring myself to that place. And I think, yeah, we do hold these. And when I did my shamanic work, I found the generations and generations and generations where we have something that starts as a seed and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until we work it through. So that was very profound. And I think that was something that to have, just to hear people discover that is amazing to me. And the other thing I wanted to share, because it's really just, I don't know how to put my hands around it, my body around it, my mind around it. I worked today. It was my first day back at the prison. And of course, I asked the guys to talk about what was going on. And most of them are people of color, men of color. And the first thing that was very shocking or very amazing and opening, one guy said, "Well, yeah, it's true. The police are horrible and there is this prejudice," and on and on. He said, "But if I hadn't been doing what I was doing, I wouldn't have been shot by the police. So I have to take responsibility for my actions." And that, of course, was extraordinary. And most of the guys listened because they're all playing the victim. And then the other thing that came up when I tried to explain to them, this is the first time in the history for any of us that we're all experiencing the same thing at the same time. They kept saying, "No, we're not." And I said, "No, but people have been locked down for months. They don't get to go out." And as I was talking, I realized I'm saying this to guys who are in solitary confinement. We think we have it bad because we're locked down in a goddamn house, you know, or an apartment, and we have backyards or we have 3 rooms to walk through. They have an 8-foot by 2-foot cell, you know, years and years and years. And I stopped myself dead in my tracks. And I realized they have no empathy for what we're going through, because do we have empathy for what they're going through and what they've gone through? And it just is sticking with me. It's so strong, you know, and unless you're a person of color, yes, and yes, of course, everybody has issues and everybody has problems and everybody has had prejudice against them because of their religion or the way they look or the way they whatever. But unless you're a person of color, you haven't had that. You just haven't had that. So it's kind of amazing. And I hear what Eleanor's saying, but I'm saying it as well as something else. And I don't quite know what to do with that yet, because these are the people I work with, and they're part of this. They're part of it, and some of them are innocent. Some of them aren't. Just like if I hadn't been where I was, doing what I shouldn't have been doing, I wouldn't have been shot in the back by the police. But of course, the police shouldn't have shot in the back. But he was very clear. He took responsibility for what he had done. So that's what I want to say.
That's amazing. And I just heard a talk yesterday where somebody said we shouldn't call what we're experiencing being locked down, because we don't know that prison experience where they really are locked down, and that there's another way to describe our experience, because they won't have sympathy for us in terms of our empathy for us for what we're going through, because we still have freedom. We can go to the grocery store, we can go out in our backyards. And so I thought that was, I haven't been calling it being locked down, but I didn't make that connection until I heard somebody speak about the prisoners, because it's so different. So different.
Yeah. And I listen to them because, the guys who come to group know that we're working soul to soul. They get it, even when they're pushing my buttons, deliberately trying to push my buttons, and they do. They're very good at it. But, they're part of this society more than we should even recognize the millions and millions of people who are incarcerated, women and men. I just haven't. Yeah. So maybe in a way, on some meta level, spiritually, metaphysically, this is a lesson we're all learning to open up our hearts to a more empathic place for more people. Maybe we think we've been in that place of openness and forgiveness and loving, and we haven't been. We haven't been.
And there are many people who have been incarcerated for for just on no grounds, on grounds that were just people just came up with because they didn't have an answer. And then 40, 50 years later, the person is freed. I've heard of cases like that in New York City, and a friend of mine who knew of a person a black man who was freed after 45 years in prison, and they discovered that he really wasn't he wasn't guilty, that it was someone else. And it's just it's and a person like that came out and was honored and enters society and becomes a responsible full-fledged citizen. That's amazing. That is true. What I call resilience. That is true resilience and forgiveness. I don't know how. That's awesome. But I hear what you're saying, Marcia. It is quite a dilemma working with people who are incarcerated.
I think what you're saying.
It's quite a challenge. I'm sure it's very challenging working with people who are incarcerated.
What you're talking about resilience, a lot of the work I've done the last 3 months has been listening to and working on what is resilience really. And I think that I've learned about resilience from these men. One guy was 16 or 17 when he went with a friend, and the friend committed a murder by accident. They were doing something bad, but they didn't intend to kill anyone. And the guy that was with him, guilty by association, when I met him, he was already in his 60s. He was the kindest, most gentlest, most creative man. He made extraordinary things out of pieces of paper. I could try and sneak some of them out one of these days and show you guys the creativity that goes on there. And with an unbelievable, deep spiritual understanding and of who he was in this world, and still looking forward at whatever he was, 60, been in prison since he was 17 or 18, of living a life when he got out. But there's many of those men and women that are part of that Innocence Project, but it still takes years, even when they get one of those great lawyers behind them to say this person was innocent, and they find the DNA and know that they didn't do what they did. It still takes 10, sometimes 15 more years of them serving the time. So they learn what we don't know what patience is. That's a theme that comes up in the prison all the time. We think we have patience, right? Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. But it's all part of the same world, you guys. We're all part of that world. We're not apart from it, and everything, especially us on this dance therapy journey. We have the deepest, most spiritual connection of any of the art forms, of any of the psychodynamic forms. And we have to understand that we're all connected in that way, in some way. So, whatever. Right now, I just gave this, when I worked with the little girls, the juvenile offending girls, they'd go, whatever. And that was
Oh my God. Oh.
Yes.
Well, that's great that you have your job back, Marcia. It's great.
Yes, you can define great any way you want, Eleanor, okay?
I'm saying, I mean, that's what you wanted, isn't it? Isn't that what you wanted?
Oh, gosh.
Over to you, Angela.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for Nathania, for a lovely experiential, and for everyone for sharing so deeply and from your hearts and so sincerely. This is a very precious time. I'm really, really in awe of it. Thank you so much.